So have you ever thought, how do we structure our plants or our plant collection in a way that they don't fall apart when we do? Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, this is a video for all the people that maybe are dreading the kind of growth season that's about to start. Maybe you're noticing some signs already in your plants, and I've done a video recently that I'll link at the top there, where you're kind of seeing that things are about to start going. And for a lot of people, that might be like, yay, finally, we're looking at spring and summer, we're looking at some growth in the plants. I've been so bored with nothing happening over the winter. But for a lot of people, there is a sense of impending doom and dread, because things are going to start getting busier, and maybe your life is kind of complicated, or there's things going on, or you're less physically or mobily able to do more things these days, and you're a bit more concerned. So I want to touch on how to potentially look at structuring collections or your houseplants in a way that it doesn't stress you out any further. And I know there's been a lot of conversations that we've been having over the last few weeks about people when they're downsizing their collections, what success might look like, all of these things, what a perfect plant might be, and why you might want to have a perfect plant or maybe not want to have a perfect plant. This is kind of the natural progression of that for the people that want a bit of an easier go at it with their plants, or even for people who are not kind of in desperate need for something to be easier, but they are curious to kind of say, okay, is there ways that I can do this so it doesn't end up being quite so taxing? So if I do have a busy week, or if my kid has got stuff that I need to focus on, or there's a lot going on at work, I don't have to start stressing about my plants. So the first thing, and you might already be able to see the hint of the first one, is choosing the right type of plants. And this is not going to be the typical video of me going, you need to go for quote unquote easy plants. Yes and no. And I'm going to be kind of reclassifying a bit what easy might mean in this situation, but choosing the right type of plant. So for instance, the obvious example here being something like a golden pothos. And a golden pothos is going to be straightforward. A golden pothos is a pothos is a pothos is a pothos. It's going to be fine. It's generally going to be an easier plant to care for. It's not going to be so demanding of your time. But I also do hear the people in the back going, okay, but I don't want to just have a house full of golden pothos. Some people might want that. More power to you. And I know there's a lot of different varieties. They are still epipremnums, and they are still going to be relatively forgiving and relatively easy to take care of. But I would say, okay, have a selection, and again, depending on maybe what you see your stress levels like being, or what you might foresee, if you can think that far ahead, to think, oh, okay, I'm gonna have all of this going on. You might have a lot of weddings to attend coming up in the spring and summer. You might have a big job promotion that you're going for. It might just be a seasonal thing, or again, you might have a life-changing kind of illness that's happened recently that you want to kind of adjust for. And hopefully this video is going to help make things a bit easier. So yes, going for something like this, but you don't have to just focus on this. You could also have a few, not the vast majority of your collection, being kind of a medium effort plant. So this is a Rhaphidophora, and I can never remember the name. I'll put it at the top somewhere basically. But this is slightly more medium effort because it is variegated. And you can see this is also on a moss pole. But this is one of those plants that, you know what, could work, and you should, if you've been dealing with this for long enough, you should be able to know some medium effort plants which you know are not going to be your drama queens. They're not going to be the ones that are going to need you hovering, and it could look very different to a lot of different people. I encourage all of you that are watching this, especially because I know that my audience is very knowledgeable about houseplants in general. You might want to make some suggestions down below if you've got any ideas of what you might consider a medium effort plant. Not the standard kind of pothos, but something that's more of a medium effort plant, and explain why you think it's a medium effort plant, because your medium effort might be hard for some people or super easy for other people. I think that's going to be quite useful for people to know. But for me, this is what I would class as a medium effort plant because yes, I do need to be aware of its light requirements because of the variegation, but it's still a Rhaphidophora, so it's relatively unassuming. I just need to be super aware with the Rhaphidophora that I don't let it sit super wet for super long without getting a decent level of light, and that is the medium effort side of things. And then also, I'm going to talk about the negatives here as well. Plants, this you can tell how well this plant is done. Some of the plants that are prima donnas or are difficult, this would be the time to say goodbye. So either compost, or if you've got the energy, because you don't need more things to take up more of your energy. If you've got more energy and you want to kind of gift it to somebody or sell it to somebody, do that as well because somebody else might appreciate it. If you are not in that state of mind at this particular moment in time, not that you need my permission for this, but I am giving you full permission to just compost the damn plant, basically. You don't need more things stressing you out or putting more things on top of everything else you need to do. So this example here, not that you can tell it's an alocasia, probably. This is the alocasia Jacqueline. I have tried time and time again. I am officially calling it quits with this plant. This is going in the compost bin because just no. I don't have the time to be babying this where it really doesn't bring me that much joy and it doesn't really look that great most of the time. I do not need freeloaders in my collection anymore. But if you're trying to think about plants that could fit within these scenarios of the slightly easier plants or the medium type plants is, have they got thicker roots? Have they got thicker leaves, which means they're not going to be quite as demanding on water? Is a plant, like for instance, maybe like a Sansevieria reclassified as a Dracaena now, is it one that doesn't really mind if you miss a watering or two? These are going to be plants that are going to fit within that easy category or even medium category if they're not ticking all of the boxes, but only a few. And remember, it's not about morally easy plants, it is more about how it fits within your life and your requirements for right now. Now let's talk about kind of pots and growing media and what that might mean in terms of making it an easier collection to take care of when just life gets a bit lifey, really. So things like mounting things that are meant to be epiphytic. So this is a blue star fern. For a lot of people that maybe didn't know, this is an epiphytic fern being grown currently on a mount, and it's doing exceptionally well. It also means that this can go drier for a lot sooner or a lot longer without it having any real issues. So that is also a good option. The other thing that you might want to do is something with a plant in a cache pot. This is the Hoya retusa. So it's doing okay for the people that are questioning, but invariably, because a Hoya is a Hoya is a Hoya, there are mealybugs that I am constantly dealing with on this plant because it's a Hoya. But and trust me, you've not experienced mealybugs in the right way on a Hoya unless you're dealing with a very delicate, small-leaved Hoya. That's crazy on a different level. But that's just me, and I'm okay with this. I would still class this as a medium plant for me. This is not a high diva plant for me. But something like a cache pot to kind of have around the pot itself, which means that even if you've got holes and things like this, it would mean that the soil would dry out a bit slower. And if life gets in the way, one of the things that immediately becomes really, really difficult to kind of get around to doing is something as simple as watering, because it's not simple anymore. If you've got a lot of stuff going on and you're just not in the right state of mind, or if you're less physically able, that's going to be something that's going to take up a lot of your energy in order to do. So anything you could do to help reduce the frequency of that water, we talked about the plants kind of choice before, but also what you can do in terms of the soil and the pots itself. So an extreme example of this would be, I could have a Hoya, and I've had good results, and I know this is a controversial topic. I could have a Hoya, and for me it's always done better, in something like a terracotta pot. This does great for me. However, it does mean that it dries out a lot more often. Granted, a Hoya might still not be one of those things that people necessarily want to do. For a lot of people, Hoyas are easy, especially the people that don't really get any form of bugs on them as well. because they are slow growing. They've got thicker leaves. Their roots are small, but they can be quite chunky. And depending on the Hoya, that could be quite a good thing because it means that it's a lot more forgiving. For a lot of the times, we all collectively probably water our Hoyas. This is a bad example because this is a Hoya that does appreciate being watered a bit more frequently. But for the vast majority of Hoyas with very succulent leaves, there's a lot of people who do not kind of follow all the edicts of like houseplant growing and all these things, that are literally letting their Hoyas wrinkle up first and then they'll water, and that could be weeks before they need watering. Great, easy plant in that respect. As I said, easy plant doesn't need to tick all of the boxes. It could tick a few, or it could be a medium kind of difficulty plant. But maybe something like a terracotta pot isn't going to be the best thing because it will dry out a lot faster. Something like a plastic pot, even if you want to get it with the clear pot so you can see what's happening, maybe don't include the holes because that will promote it drying out a bit faster. Putting it in something like a cache pot will mean that even when it's going to get really warm and sunny and all these things, that should hold on to some moisture a bit longer. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say at the moment, I don't have any that are easy for me to pick up. They're all in big pots with big cache pots at the bottom or big like drip trays at the bottom. Something like semi-hydro is also a great idea a lot of the times because at that point you don't have to worry about checking soil levels, checking all these things, especially if you're using something like a clear pot or even a self-watering pot. You might only need to ever fill up the reservoir, which can make things a lot easier for people. There is a higher price to pay in terms of transitioning your plants to semi-hydro, so that is still effort. So I'm not saying do that if you don't have the time or the energy to do that. But if you do have a burst, maybe at this time of the year where things are a bit slower, that could be a good, interesting option for you to at least try out and see how that works out for you. Anybody who's kind of growing a lot of plants in semi-hydro that wants to chip in down below and tell people some of their good or bad experiences, please do so in the comments. And one little last thing I want to say on this is choosing the right substrate as well. So for a lot of us, especially people that are worried about root rot, especially for the more prima donna plants, but theoretically, if you're going to try to make your collection a bit more streamlined, you're not going to have that many or any prima donna plants, is yes, an airy aroid mix is really, really good. People have seen me use an anthurium mix for a lot of my plants, knowing full well that I'm going to be watering more frequently. If you are the person who doesn't want to do too much care and you want to take it a bit easier, don't go for something that's still airy, but nothing that's super airy, because it means it's going to be able to maintain the moisture for a bit longer. But for you, obviously, the reason why we're saying thicker roots, thicker leaves, all of these things, you are definitely going to be wanting those plants to go dry, which probably will be happening if you're not going to want to water as often. And it means that that pot can stay a bit wetter for a bit longer, again, lengthening that time between first watering and second watering. Because essentially what you need to remember is good systems kind of minimize the amount of decisions that need to be made. So if you set yourself up well for success, you don't have to think about it too much. It will kind of take care of itself in the sense that it will give you that time to breathe in between caring for your plants. The next thing, and bear with me with this one before you switch off entirely, is going to be plant grouping. And I'm not going to do the usual thing that everybody does, like group plants together for humidity. And yes, there is validity in that as well. But grouping plants together based on needs. So, for example, if you know that these 5 plants over here all have the same light requirements, I know this might sound kind of self-explanatory, put them all together in a group in that light environment that they need. Same thing goes for watering, and sometimes you're going to need to make a decision as to which is more important, not necessarily just to the plant, but for your mental health. So if you know that a lot of plants that maybe you've got 5 plants that need more frequent watering, whatever that might mean in your scenario, that might just mean once a week or once every 2 weeks when everything else is once a month. Put those plants together because it's less movement for you to have to go around and less time wasted. You could just water them all in one go because they're all grouped together. Same thing goes if you've got stuff that's like every month that needs watering, group those all together so you don't have far to go. You don't want to be traipsing up and down your house to do all the different waterings because you've got some low watering requirement plants upstairs, some downstairs, and vice versa. And it's all of these things. You try to minimize the effort that you're going to need to put in when you are doing the care for the plants. There's also an added benefit here as well. If there's like fewer locations for plants because they're grouped together, there's less of a chance of things getting forgotten as well. And I will jump in here and say, before anybody shames anybody about this being a lazy way of doing this, no, 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 no. None of that in this video or in my community, please. This is for people that are trying their hardest to still keep some of these things that are bringing them joy. Completely fine if you are minimizing or downsizing entirely and you want to come back to plants in a different time. There is no shame in that either. But for the people that still want to at least keep some of this hobby, because, and I see the comments from a lot of different people kind of saying, I'm still doing this for my mental health, or I'm housebound basically, and I still need something to be doing. That's fine as well, but also I might not have high energy levels, or I've been diagnosed with this, or I've just had a new baby, or I've got a new baby on the way, but I still want to do this. How do I do this? This is for a lot of those people. And the average person whose just life gets out of control at some point. Some people might just want to do this because it safeguards and gets things ready that if you know something might happen, I'd rather be prepared rather than having to also juggle all of this when something is happening. So it's called, what's the expression? Life happens when we're making plans, or something like that. So like you can make all the plans in the world and everything might be fully planned out, but life will happen and things will go sideways. And you need to deal with several curveballs potentially. This is for those people, so no shame in the comments, please. The next thing I want to discuss is care routines that actually flex around you. What this might look like is if you've got a whole bunch of plants that desperately need to be watered 100% every week, that's not being flexible. If you've got plants or your setup is in such a way that if you end up missing a watering a day or two or even a week and the plant is still fine, and it's still kind of going to perk up after you've done what you need to do, that's okay. So maybe don't get yourself a spathiphyllum or a peace lily. Because, and in all fairness, it will flop down and tell you that it needs attention, but there is a point of no return or a point of some destruction with those types of plants where if you've let it flop for an awful lot of period of time and you can't get to it very quickly, you might do some irreparable damage at that point and it's just going to stress you out more than you need to. So again, think about how you've set things up. Again, look at the locations that we were talking about before. Light might not just be the light that the plants need, but it might be slightly less quality light than the plants need. They're still going to be happy, but not ecstatic or not kind of growing their best life, but maybe slightly less light, which means that it gives you a bit of a buffer window in case of missed waterings, in case of I really cannot cope with this today, and not having to worry that if I miss this today, it's one more thing that could kind of go horribly wrong for me and I might end up losing a plant. You want something that your routine is going to be flexible and flexible around whoopsie fucks, basically, or like what's happened, I kind of can't do this right now. Sometimes it's even things like grouping things together for the plants of when I have energy or when I don't. And again, remember what we were talking about before. Your plants that might be a bit more frequent if they're grouped together versus the plants that don't need as much frequency. Those are going to be good ways of doing it because again, you're not going to have to run around the house watering different plants in different locations, but you can easily say, okay, if at minimum I can maybe muster up the energy, if you even can, to water 5 plants. Water the ones over here that need to be every week. The ones that are over there that might need it every month, even if it's their time to be watered and it's been a month, they can probably still survive for an extra week if you need to without it being watered. And before anybody questions that, I will ask you, when you go on holiday, because a lot of us have experienced this, and it's always surprising every time we all go on holiday, you give all of these instructions to whoever's taking care of your plants, or don't give any instructions and you just go away, you've kind of watered everything and you go away, and invariably we all come back from those holidays and it's just like, why are my plants doing so much better whilst I wasn't here? Do you know what I mean? Plants are very adaptable. You would be surprised because ultimately they're not always living, even in nature, in the perfect conditions. There might be ups and downs in terms of climate, in terms of weather, in terms of all of these things, which means they are relatively adaptable. Again, choosing the right plant for adaptability and setting them up for that level of adaptability is going to be your biggest friend here. I'll do the last bit on a bit of a bummer of a note, basically, but it's also knowing when to let go. The allocation, Jacqueline. Trust me, there's a few more as well. But there is something very freeing about, and again, I have seen all of your comments. This is not just me assuming things. I have seen a lot of the comments that people have made on some of my most recent videos. There is something really freeing about downsizing, minimizing. Again, if you don't want to do that, I'm not downsizing my collection hugely. I know a lot of people want a downsizing video. You'll get a downsizing video in terms of me getting rid of plants that do not spark joy anymore, but I am not ready yet to downsize. But that is my life path at the moment, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, especially with all the stuff that I've got going on this year and buying houses and all these things, and I can always rebuild my collection. We all have kind of peaks and valleys within our journey, and kind of how we get there and how things might change and how things might go back or not. That's completely fine. But letting go isn't always as much of a problem as you might think. Things have changed. I've spoken to a lot of new mums on a lot of those comments where you're just like, I can't do this anymore because my family's about to grow again, or I'm about to have my first kid, and I know I'm not going to have the time to deal with all of this madness. So I feel bad about the fact that I need to downsize my collection. Just don't. Like, that is where your life is taking you at this particular moment in time. Remember what I was talking about before? Life is what happens when we stop making plans, or when we do make plans? I don't know. Hopefully the expression lands with a few people that might know it, but it's one of those things. You can have all the best plans in the world. Life is going to happen and you're going to have to adjust, unfortunately. But getting rid of things that don't spark joy, getting rid of things that might be too much and you know you're going to have a stressful year, get rid of them. You can always add most of these things back in the collection. I'll give you a little tip for free as well that I did years ago, and hopefully the individual might kind of watch this video, because I know that she's kind of come back into the community a bit more recently. But insurance plants with kind of planty friends. So for instance, if you know that you need to downsize your collection for a season or two, and you don't want to get rid of a plant that took you forever to find, or it's massively large and all these things, ask a planty friend. Ask a planty friend. Can I send you this one plant? Maybe it's a plant that they want as well, and they can maybe take a cutting of your plant for free. And can you care for this plant for me in off chance that I might want to re-bring it into my collection? I don't have to chase for it and all of these things later down the line. Obviously, ask if your friend is okay with this. You'd be surprised, a lot of people are generally going to be okay with that if they don't need to downsize the same way that you are, or if they've really wanted that plant for a long period of time. They might really be open to this. And then at least you've got a bit of an insurance plant there at the point where you're like, okay, it's a few months later, a few weeks later, a few years later, potentially, again, depending on how long your friend is willing to take care of that plant for you. See if you can get it back. But ultimately, the right way of thinking of it is it's kind of an insurance plant. Don't blame your friend if they end up killing that plant. You were going to get rid of it anyway, but this is a kind of halfway point. If they're open to it, you just kind of say, you know what, if I ever go back into this and that person has still got the plant and they're happy to give it back to me, even if it just means I then get a cutting of what is now their plant, that might still be okay. There are ways that this doesn't have to be so overwhelming. And there's something to be said about the fact that plants don't necessarily need to be a moral obligation. And sometimes less plants means you get to enjoy your collection again. Again, I've seen from a lot of you out there that a lot of people who have downsized a bit have now kind of said, I've downsized and I'm enjoying the hobby again. Like, it was getting out of control at some point. I know that's not everybody. I understand that. But there is a lot of people out there that have done this. They've kind of got slightly less plants now. And actually, they're just, I'm enjoying this more now. I'm back to the kind of early days of really enjoying doing this. There is something to be said about that. And that in itself will be less stressful, because even when you do have the energy, you're doing something again that you enjoy with that energy that you've got. So it doesn't become a chore so much anymore. But essentially, it's making a collection that you can maintain during the hardest months of the year, your life, whatever, just to help you kind of get going a bit longer. And for a lot of people, this might be their new norm. This is what they want to do. It's an easier way of doing this, and they might just kind of look at it and go, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I do all of these things sooner? It just makes my life a bit easier. So coming into some of my final thoughts for this, and the big thing that I can kind of say with this is and I know because there was a lot of differing opinions. I found the comments on the video about plant perfection really interesting. I thought they were all going to skew one way or another, but there was a good mix, and I appreciate and I see and I hear every single one of you. That video ended up being the conversation that I needed it to be, so that people can see both sides of that coin. But in essence, if you are in this life stage where you are kind of, it's overwhelming and all of these things, your worth is not pinned on plant perfection. They just need to make it through, basically. I can't remember what the expression is again, so many expressions today. But it's like, they always say this, I don't know if it was somebody famous that said this, and it's just like, I don't want to end up at the end of my life in a coffin in a pristine body. I want to have bruises, scrapes, cuts, all of these things, and to show a life lived, basically. Sometimes all you need from your collection, especially if you're having a hard time with it all, is for them to just make it through and get you through to the other side, where you might be able to re-pick it up or give up entirely, or all of these things. You just need it to make it through. Obviously, this is not going to be for everybody. It's depending on your life stage and what your stress levels might be at that point. But ultimately, and this is something that could apply to everybody who wants to try this, is it's making collections more maintainable and less overwhelming. Because that's the big thing that I'm hearing at the moment, is there was a sheer level of overwhelm that a lot of people are kind of experiencing. And it's nice that people are kind of getting back to a stage now where it's just like, no, this is manageable. And it was really heartening to see people that are just coming into the hobby more recently, and they're very fortunate. We all wish that we were them at this point, basically, because they can see all of us who have been through these levels of burnouts and all of these things, and life getting in the way and having to deal with all of the stresses of having big collections. And they can look at it because somebody's already gone through it and just gone, oh, I need to be careful. I maybe need to not do this. They might still go through the same things that we all did. And that's fine. Everybody's journey is their own. But it's something that if we had before kind of a lot of people within the community giving us the warning signals and just going, be careful, this can happen. You can spiral from 5 plants to 150 plants really easily. It's nice having that knowledge and being able to share it with people to maybe save some people some grief. And as I said, some people are still going to go through it because it was their life's journey to go through it the same way that we all did, and that's fine as well. But yes, let me know if I've missed any kind of big tips that you would give people that are wanting to make their house plants or their collection a bit more manageable. If it is for stress reasons or health reasons or even just life reasons, they just want it to be a bit more manageable, what tips would you give other people within the community that have maybe worked for you? But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.